And that concludes business questions. I have got a list of members who were unsuccessful in catching my eye today, but can I just ask members to reflect on the length of the questions that they're asking? It's really difficult to get everybody in with such long questions. We now move on to the statement, and before we come to the statement, I'll just let the Chancellor get in her place. And before we come to the statement, I have to say to the Chancellor that Mr Speaker has checked the Ministerial Code, and it makes clear that important policy announcements should be made in the first instance in this House when it is sitting. This House and its members should be the first to know what the government is doing, not TikTok. Posting videos on social media announcing new policies before informing this House is not in line with the government's own rules. This is a new parliamentary session and ministers must do better. I now call on the Chancellor. Chancellor.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. And with permission, I will make a statement on the government's economic response to the war in Iran and the action that we are taking to support families and businesses with rising costs. Madam Deputy Speaker, the government has the right economic plan. I said I would grow the economy, and last week the Office for National Statistics confirmed that Britain's economy was the fastest growing in the G7 for the first quarter of this year. We beat the Office for Budget Responsibility's forecast in the spring, with economic growth at 0.6% in the 3 months to March. And because of the resilience of our economy, this week the International Monetary Fund upgraded Britain's forecast for this year. I said I would cut borrowing. Borrowing last year was £20 billion lower than the previous year, and the latest forecasts show it falling in every year of this Parliament. The IMF has backed our economic plan, saying that the government's fiscal framework strikes, and I quote, a good balance between deficit reduction and growth-friendly spending. I said I would cut the cost of living. Since the election, interest rates have been cut 6 times. Real wages have continued to rise in every single month since I became Chancellor. And yesterday, the ONS confirmed that inflation fell in April faster than expected, making the UK the only G7 economy where inflation fell last month. Madam Deputy Speaker, we have the right economic plan, but the conflict in the Middle East poses a significant challenge to the world's economy, including our own. I have not shied away from my criticism of the war. I believe it to have been a mistake. Nor have I ignored the costs that it will bring to bear on the British people. I have been clear-eyed about my duty to do what I can to support families and businesses, to be responsive to a changing world and responsible in the national interest. Next week, Ofgem will confirm the level of the energy price cap that will apply from July. I know that any increase will be felt by families. Because of the decision that I made at the budget last year to cut £150 from energy bills, we have lessened the impact of rising prices, and current external forecasts suggest that the cap from July will be at a similar level to the cap in April last year. We stand ready to act if market conditions worsen significantly later this year, and I have been leading cross-government contingency work on design of potential future targeted and temporary support. For businesses, any support will also need to be carefully targeted at firms most exposed to the crisis. But while many firms have been insulated from recent price rises through fixed-price contracts, there are sectors that face particular structural issues related to energy costs. That is why we have already increased support for our most energy-intensive industries through the British Industry Competitiveness Scheme, and we've brought that forward. And it is why we have also built resilience in our critical infrastructure and industrial strategy sectors, where supply chains are critical for growth and security. Following representations from my right honourable friends, the members for Redcar, Mid Cheshire and Bathgate Linlithgow, and building on the good work of the Minister for Industry, I am today establishing a £350 million critical chemicals resilience fund to support strategically important producers. And having listened to my right honourable honourable friends, including the members for Stoke-on-Trent Central, North and South, and my honourable friend, the member for Amber Valley, and workers represented by the GMB Union, I am today announcing a new £120 million fund to help our historic ceramics sector, helping them to increase efficiency and drive down energy costs, because we will always stand up for British industry and for British jobs. The government has also this week set out additional targeted support for those businesses most exposed to rising fuel costs. For hauliers, the government is granting a 12-month road tax holiday for HGVs, saving the typical heavy lorry up to £912. To support farmers and the rail freight industry, I have decided to cut duty on red diesel by over a third until the end of this year. And having heard from my honourable friend, the member for Oldham West, Chadderton and Royton, and the trade union Unison, I can today announce a 10p per mile increase in tax-free mileage rates, backdated to April 2026, benefiting those who need to drive for work, from care workers to plumbers. Madam Deputy Speaker, when a country faces challenges because of higher oil and gas prices, we must ensure that those who benefit from increased prices and volatility pay their fair share. In my first budget, I extended and increased the energy profits levy. Last year, I announced a new permanent windfall tax regime on oil and gas prices. Last month, I increased the electricity generator levy, alongside further action to weaken the link between high gas prices and electricity prices. Today, I am bringing forward specific changes to the taxation of foreign branch profits, changing how companies are taxed in relation to their overseas activities. Currently, some oil and gas groups that operate overseas through foreign branches have structured their tax affairs in a way which ensures they pay little or no corporation tax on their UK energy trading profits. Today, we are putting an end to that practice. We expect these reforms to raise hundreds of millions of pounds a year and fund the package of measures set out today, with costings certified by the OBR forecast in the usual way. Madam Deputy Speaker, I know the pressure that family finances are under. That is why I have already taken action to provide help. I increased the national living wage and the national minimum wage to their highest rates ever. I have frozen prescription charges for 2 years in a row, and I've frozen rail fares for the first time in 30 years. I've taken £150 off energy bills, which contributed towards the fall in inflation last month. But I want to go further. And today I am taking further action to ease the burden on family finances. First, on fuel duty. I have already extended the 5p cut twice since the election, and I can confirm today that there will be no rise in fuel duty this year, recognising the pressure that the war has put on fuel prices. Second, I know that the cost of the weekly shop is often one of the biggest worries for families. So last month, I met with supermarkets to urge them to do all they can to keep prices low. And today I am taking action by suspending tariffs on over 100 different foods sold in supermarkets. And I am clear that I expect supermarkets to pass these savings on in full to their customers. And third, I will not tolerate any company exploiting the current situation to make excess profits at consumers' expense. So I am bringing forward tough new powers so that the Competition and Markets Authority and other regulators can take action when firms break the rules. Fourth, for many families, driving is not always an option. Buses are the most popular form of public transport in Britain, with over 4 billion journeys made last year. I have already extended the £3 bus fare cap to March 2027, and today I can confirm that bus travel across England will be free for children aged between 5 and 15 throughout August. Finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, I recognise that what matters for families is not just getting by, but being able to enjoy time together without worrying about the next bill. That is why I am launching the Great British Summer Savings Scheme to help families and support our hospitality sector. So I can today announce a temporary cut in the rate of VAT on summer attractions from 20% to 5% over the summer holidays. This will apply to ticket prices for both adults and children, covering attractions such as fairs, theme parks, zoos and museums. It will include children's tickets for cinemas, concerts, soft play and the theatre. And it will cut the cost of children's meals in restaurants and cafes from 20% VAT to 5% as well. These changes will apply across the UK from the start of the Scottish school holidays on the 25th of June and run until the end of school holidays in England, Wales and Northern Ireland on the 1st of September. Madam Deputy Speaker, this government has the right economic plan. We promised to grow the economy, and we have. We promised to cut inflation, and we have. And we promised to cut the cost of living, and we are. Promises made by a Labour government, promises delivered by a Labour government, and I commend this statement to the House.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And could I thank the Chancellor for advance sight of her statement, though of course the press got even more advance sight of it. Madam Deputy Speaker, the decision taken to cancel the increase in fuel duty is welcome. It has been a long time coming. The Conservative Party has been campaigning against the fuel duty rise for months, but the Chancellor has defended that policy repeatedly. That left motorists and businesses worried about even higher fuel prices in September. It was always obvious that the fuel duty increase would need to be cancelled, obvious to everyone except the Chancellor. So can I ask, why did the Chancellor fight us on fuel duty for so long? Why has she been so hell-bent on raising fuel duty during an energy crisis? Well, inevitably, Madam Deputy Speaker, the U-turn has finally come. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, it is astonishing to hear the Chancellor claiming that the government can afford to help households because the forecasts have improved. Is the Chancellor seriously suggesting that the economic outlook is now better than at the time of the last fiscal forecasts, when we have had the Iran conflict, to which our economy is highly exposed thanks to this government's ruinous choices? The Chancellor has just pointed to the IMF forecast being upgraded this week. But let's be very clear about what is going on here. The IMF adjusted their growth forecast for this year up slightly to 1%. But until April, they were forecasting 1.3%. So where exactly is the supposed growth dividend? Will she directly address that point? This is exactly the same game that the government played last year when they U-turned on cuts to the winter fuel payment. They claimed then they were U-turning because the economy was improving, when of course it was due to political pressure. Nobody bought it then, and nobody is buying it now. Once again, we have a weak government caving into the inevitable after spending months defending a truly terrible decision. Madam Deputy Speaker, the Chancellor claims the measures announced today will be funded by a number of different tax measures. But most of the measures she mentions are already in place and baked into the OBR's forecasts. So given the Chancellor has not announced any measures to control government spending, can she confirm that, in fact, the measures she is announcing today will be funded at least in part by yet more government borrowing? And can she confirm whether the fuel duty rates will still be rising to the same level as previously planned after December, or whether today's announcement will mean a permanent reduction in fuel duty. Madam Deputy Speaker, whilst we on this side of the House welcome some of the measures the Chancellor has taken today, like the increase in mileage allowances, this is all very minor compared to the inflation this government have fuelled since coming into office, and the tax rises that the Chancellor has imposed. Today's announcements will bring little comfort to the hundreds of thousands of people who have lost their jobs, to the countless businesses that have folded, and to those high streets which are now hollowed out. The reality is that we are in a terrible position to deal with the consequences of this latest energy crisis, thanks to the actions that this government has taken. The Chancellor claimed growth is up. It is actually down. She claimed borrowing is down. It's 75% up compared to the plans that she inherited. She claimed she's fighting inflation. We have the highest inflation in the G7. She claimed she's cutting energy bills. Energy bills have gone up under this Labour government. And of course, she didn't mention unemployment. On the energy, Madam Deputy Speaker, on energy, this government have made a conscious decision not to exploit our own natural resources in the North Sea, weakening our economy and our energy security, whilst importing oil from Putin's Russia at the cost of Ukrainian lives. Families and businesses are facing rising costs and rising taxes. People are losing their jobs. The country is hurting. If the Chancellor was serious about the challenges we face, she would commit to getting spending down, tackling the benefits bill, getting taxes down to strengthen our economy. But thanks to the Chancellor's mistakes and the weakness of this dying government, this statement today is all we get. Does the Chancellor really think this is enough?
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Let me take the issues that the Shadow Chancellor has raised. First of all, on fuel duty. When I became Chancellor of the Exchequer, the freeze in fuel duty was due to expire under the plan set out in the final budget of the Conservatives within a matter of months. I've frozen fuel duty twice already, and I've frozen it again today. And indeed, I've frozen it with more than 3 months to go before the increase was due to happen, giving people plenty of time. I have always said, since the Middle East conflict began, that I would keep an eye on what was happening to oil and gas prices and set out plans ahead of the change due to come to effect in September, and that is exactly what I've done. But I've also gone further in 3 specific areas, with additional support for hauliers, additional support for red diesel, particularly helping the rail, freight industry and farmers, and also the higher mileage rates. And the Shadow Chancellor says he welcomes the changes on mileage rates. Well, it's the first time they've been increased since 2011. So if he welcomes them so much, why didn't they increase them when they had 14 years in government? On the Iran conflict, well, let's remember that this is a war that the UK did not start, that this government chose not to join, whereas the Conservatives and Reform were cheering on that conflict every step of the way. And the impacts on the UK economy and the global economy would be much more severe if we'd have heeded the warnings of pleas of Reform and Conservatives to join that conflict. The Shadow Chancellor talks about inflation and growth. Well, inflation yesterday, the numbers showed that inflation had fallen. We're the only country in the G7 where inflation fell last month. The IMF have revised up our growth forecast forecast, and we had the fastest growth of the G7 in the first quarter of this year. And the Shadow Chancellor says, is this going to be paid for with new borrowing? No, it's not. If the Shadow Chancellor had been listening, he would have heard the changes we're making around the foreign branch exemption. That will raise hundreds of millions of pounds a year, which is why we are able to afford the package that we have announced today. The Shadow Chancellor mentions high streets. Well, because of the Pride in Place money that I announced at the budget, because of the banking hubs, and indeed because of the changes we made to business rates, which have actually seen business rates for retail and hospitality come down significantly compared to the plans we inherited from the Conservative government, we can reinvigorate our high streets. The Shadow Chancellor mentions borrowing. Well, borrowing has fallen below 5% for the first time since 2019 because of the actions that I have taken as Chancellor, and borrowing is expected to fall in every year of this Parliament. Very different from what happened under the Conservatives. Employment and activity remain in the top half of the OECD and of the G7. And the biggest benefits boom came under the last Conservative government when the Shadow Chancellor was the Work and Pensions Secretary. And on oil and gas will play an important role in our economy for many years to come. But we also need to invest in renewable energy, which is why we announced yesterday restrictions in the number of judicial reviews that are holding up investment in clean energy. It is a shame that the Conservatives voted against our Planning and Infrastructure Act. It's a shame that the Liberal Democrats abstained on it, but we are determined to get Britain building, including the energy infrastructure we need to get bills down. And just a couple of weeks ago, I announced changes around tiebacks to make it easier for oil and gas companies to exploit their reserves of oil and gas in the North Sea. And Jackdaw and Rosebank would have gone ahead if it hadn't been for the last government messing up the way it's legislated. And we are going to be announcing shortly the decisions. The Secretary of State for Energy and Net Zero will make those decisions. But I am very clear. Oil and gas will play an important role in the UK for many years to come, adding to our energy security, alongside investment in nuclear, in small modular reactors, in floating offshore wind, in onshore wind and solar, opposed by the party opposite.
Chair of the Select Committee, Dame Meg Hillier.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, it never fails to amaze me that the Shadow Chancellor tries to lecture this government on inflation when many of us were here in September 22 when his party crashed the economy. I welcome my right honourable friend's interventions, and I'm particularly interested in the cut in VAT in the leisure sector. And I hope that she will be commissioning a full study from the Exchequer Secretary about the impact on this, because it could be a great way to fuel and promote and keep going our stretched leisure and hospitality sector. So will she commit to that?
I absolutely agree with my right honourable friend that we'll take no lessons from the party opposite on inflation when it reached more than 11% when they were last in office. In terms of VAT on the leisure sector, we are making these changes from the 25th of June right until the 1st of September to help boost the hospitality sector, but also to help families, crucially to help families during the summer. Our expectation is that this will cost taxpayers' money, but it is funded through the changes we're making around the foreign branch exemption, so that companies can't book losses overseas to avoid paying their fair share of corporation tax here in Britain.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Daisy Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I do feel as though we're slightly through the looking glass. For 6 months, we Liberal Democrats have been calling for an emergency temporary VAT cut for hospitality, leisure and attractions, and our pledge was fully funded. For weeks, we have been calling for an emergency transport package fully funded using the additional revenue from higher VAT rates and the EPL levy as well. But for all this time, Madam Deputy Speaker, we have been told repeatedly that it was impossible to do these things, that there was no additional money. and somehow the prospect of a by-election in Makerfield and the Prime Minister's political life on the line means that the money has now been found. But let me ask the Chancellor two questions. First of all, on food. I genuinely welcome the government's focus on the cost of food, because this is an issue of huge concern to many of our constituents in all political parties here. But can I please ask the Chancellor whether there is any risk at all that short-term gain may result in any long-term pain? By looking at these tariffs, has the Chancellor had any conversations with the food manufacturing industry about whether they can remain competitive, whether there's any risk that removing these tariffs might inadvertently undermine our food manufacturing sector, and if there is any risk, whether she would look at our plans for a good food bill and promoting nature-friendly farming. And I ask that question in the spirit of constructive opposition. And secondly, Madam Deputy Speaker, the Chancellor and her ministers will know that we are due to have a very hot summer. And that means that outdoor attractions will have huge demand, because children will want to be outside in this hot weather. Indoor attractions, such as soft play centres, will not benefit so much because there won't be much demand in the summer months, but there will be demand in the winter months. And so could I ask the Chancellor to look very carefully at the differences within the attraction sector, because children are priced out of play when they need to go indoors in the winter months, not so much in the summer months. Thank you.
I thank the honourable lady for those questions. I'm not sure whether she welcomes the changes around the foreign branch exemption or not, which is what is going to pay for these policies today, ensuring that companies pay their fair share of tax here in the UK. But it is important that we always say where the money is going to come from, because unless you can do that, all it results in is higher inflation and interest rates in the future. And that's why I've always been clear that everything I will announce is always going to be fully costed and fully funded. On food, you can't say you both welcome and think that we need to help with the cost of living, but then you're a bit uncertain about tariff reductions. But we have focused these tariff reductions on food products, agri-foods, that we don't produce in significant quantities in the UK, and we've worked very closely with the Department for Business and Trade in identifying those sectors. On the issue of summer activities, indoor and outdoor, well, I've had enough family holidays in the UK to know that there are plenty of days when it's raining, and I'm sure that the leader of the Liberal Democrats will be visiting a soft play centre soon.
Gareth Snell.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. And can I declare my chairmanship of the APPG for ceramics? Can I thank the Chancellor for today's announcement, and can I also thank the work done by the Right Honourable Member for Hove and Portslade and the Minister from Stockton North for their support. This is a really big step towards support for a sector that offers so much to this country. And can I thank Sharon Yates and Finbar Barry from the GMB, as well as Rob Frello and Hannah Roll from Ceramics UK for their leadership in this. But could I extract from the Chancellor a commitment that this is the next stage of a new partnership between the UK Government and UK Ceramics, because today's announcement will absolutely help us survive. But with more working together, we can thrive as a sector and do our bit to boost exports, boost growth and create well-paid unionised jobs in this country.
I genuinely want to pay tribute to my honourable friend for the work that he's done on behalf of businesses and working people in his own constituency. And along with the other Stoke MPs, the MP for Newcastle-under-Lyme and the MP for Amber Valley, you've made the case powerfully and convincingly. And I can absolutely commit today to work with Ceramics UK, the GMB and the MPs and the wider sector to make sure that the ceramics industry does indeed thrive in the UK.
Stuart Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. On the tariffs, I want to explore what the Chancellor said on significant quantities, because what is a significant quantity for a supermarket can be a completely different scale for a small South Shropshire farmer. Can the Chancellor guarantee that no South Shropshire farmers are going to be undercut by these tariffs, and none of the supermarkets will pass on these cost cuts to British farmers?
It is really important that we help our constituents with the cost of living. And the tariff reductions that I've announced today will save the British shopper £700 million. That is a significant reduction in the cost of the weekly shop for families across our country. But we've carefully chosen these tariff lines, and the full details will be published. We'll be consulting over the next week or two to make sure that we get these exactly right. But we've worked hard to make sure that this does not affect British farmers, and it's also indeed why we're helping British farmers with the changes we've made around red diesel today.
John Grady.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I welcome my right honourable friend's statement. It's great news for the cafes and restaurants in my constituents, of which there are many, and to the showmen. There are very many showmen and women who run Scotland's and Britain's great fairs as well. I know the party opposite object to all of this. It is the party opposite that left us with debt to GDP of almost 100%. And there's nothing progressive in running debt levels like that, and the Chancellor is right to focus on paying that debt off. Many of my constituents in Glasgow East rely on cars and vans to get to work and do their work. They face extortionate charging for parking in town with the SNP Council, which is utterly anti-car, and regular bills for repairing their cars and vans from all the potholes. Would my right honourable friend set out how she is helping hard-pressed car and van drivers in Glasgow?
Thank my honourable friend for that question, and he's absolutely right. There is nothing progressive about piling up the debt that future generations will have to pay, and that is why our fiscal rules are getting the debt and the deficit down, whilst also enabling us to invest in our country's infrastructure and public services. In terms of helping people with the cost of driving, we have frozen fuel duty until the end of this year, but recognising that some people rely on their cars and their vans more than others, we have also taken off the HGV tax for this year, saving HGV drivers up to just over £900 a year. We have cut the duty on red diesel by more than a third, and for those people employed and self-employed, we've increased the tax-free mileage rates to help them with the cost of fuel too.
Dr Andrew Mirison.
Deputy Speaker, the announcement on red diesel will be welcomed by my farming constituents, and they will await details on the tariffs that she has cited with a great deal of interest and with a certain amount of trepidation. But will she acknowledge that a third of the world's fertilisers pass through the Strait of Hormuz, and the increase in the price of that fertiliser is bound to have an impact on British agriculture and therefore on prices in the shops? So what will she do to relieve some of that, in some cases existential pressure on farms in the United Kingdom?
I thank the honourable gentleman for that question, and I would urge him and also businesses, farmers in his constituency to look at the list of products and make sure that it feed into the consultation over the next week or so. We are obviously keen to bring these tariff reductions into effect to reduce the prices in the shops for all of our constituents, but we want to do it in a way that is respectful of British farming, which is why we've chosen the tariff lines that we have. And we are, as the honourable gentleman recognises, doing more to support farmers with the reduction in red diesel. The best way, though, that we can help all of our constituents and the farming sector and others is to bring this conflict to an end and reopen the Strait of Hormuz, which is why the Prime Minister and the Foreign Secretary are working intensively with international partners to do just that, and at the same time working to diversify our supply of oil and gas so that that fertiliser that the honourable gentleman rightly refers to is still available for our farmers.
Lindsay Farnsworth.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Chancellor honestly for her statement. As she has mentioned, and many members of this House will be aware, I've been campaigning hard for the ceramics sector with a view to saving Denby pottery. And I want to thank the Ministers in the Treasury and Department for Business and Trade for their ongoing engagement through the many meetings that we've had on this point. So I'm delighted to hear about the £120 million support package today. This is a clear indication that the government is supporting and backing UK ceramics, and it will make Denby pottery a more attractive prospect for any potential investors. But with this in mind, the current circumstances that Denby pottery faces, can the Chancellor please commit to ensuring that the funding is available as soon as possible in the hope that Denby can be saved?
I thank my honourable friend for that question, but most of all for all the work that she does on behalf of all of her constituents, but particularly those at the moment impacted by what is happening at Denby. It was my privilege to come to Amber Valley with my honourable friend just last year to meet businesses from across her constituency. We are backing UK ceramics. We want to find a future for Denby, and we will continue to work with my honourable friend to achieve just that.
Alistair Carmichael.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I remind the House of my entry in the Register of Members' Interests. Last year, Madam Deputy Speaker, suckler beef farmers in my constituency were getting paid £7.30 per kilo for their finished product on the hook. Yesterday that was down to £5.75 and it is still falling. The price paid to dairy farmers for their milk is through the floor. Arable farmers are struggling after 2 catastrophically bad harvests. The red diesel cut is welcome, but that will not help farmers who are struggling with rocketing prices for fertiliser, or indeed those who are requiring to heat glass houses. Opening the door to ever wider to food imports risks undermining domestic food production. So if food security genuinely is national security, surely our food producers and manufacturers should have access to the same support as other critical sectors. So will the Chancellor look again now at adding food and drink to the government's industrial strategy so that they can have access to the same support as other sectors?
I thank the honourable gentleman for that question, and I know as Chair of the Select Committee he'll play a key role in scrutinising what the government are doing. Red diesel will have an immediate and important impact on the costs for farmers, with a reduction of more than a third in the rate of duty. I also appreciate the fact that his party, like the government, did not support the conflict in the Middle East and recognised that it was a mistake that would have an impact on businesses here at home. And that's why we are doing everything within our power, both to reopen the Strait of Hormuz to ease these pressures on consumers and businesses, including farmers, but also in the meantime to diversify supply and opening up new refining facilities in the UK to help businesses, including farmers, during these challenging times.
Dr Alison Gardner.
Madam Deputy Speaker, and the potteries welcome this statement today. Madam Deputy Speaker, I have been working with local companies, with the TUC, GMB and research organisations to develop proposals to support the ceramics industry to innovate, improve energy efficiency and decarbonise. And I have previously called on the government to release an industrial energy innovation fund for energy-intensive industries, with government grants to explore process efficiency and new technologies, as well as vouchers to access shared pilot facilities. Could the Chancellor therefore clarify that part of the £120 million funding announced today could be used by ceramics companies to access and invest in innovations such as AI-enabled process optimisation and energy technologies to help reduce energy bills?
I thank my honourable friend and all the MPs involved in helping put together this scheme of support for ceramics, and, like my honourable friend, welcome the work of the TUC and GMB in this. Look, innovation and ensuring that the industry is sustainable and competitive for the future is absolutely essential. This isn't just a sticking plaster policy. This is about setting up the industry for the future, including investment in innovation and R&D, and also the diversification of energy supplies.
Kirsty Blackman.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. In oil and gas jobs, the UK is losing 1,000 jobs a month. The Chancellor is aware of this, and we have made it very clear to her that we are keen to move to the UKPM as soon as possible. We would urge her to do that. In the foreign branch profits section of the announcement today, would the Chancellor let us know whether or not they have modelled the job losses that may occur as a result of this change in policy, and if she can tell the House how many job losses she thinks might occur because of this change in the oil and gas taxation regime.
I thank the honourable lady for her question, and like I said in previous answers, I recognise the role of oil and gas in the UK and its importance to the UK for many years to come, which is why we have changed the rules around tiebacks and why we've put in place a permanent mechanism for taxing windfall profits. But look, the honourable lady has to answer the question, is she in favour, and is her party in favour of the foreign branch profits exemption or not? Because if she's not, then she can't can't back the support we're giving today to help people with the cost of living and the support that we're giving for ceramics today. But in terms of what this does, it means that we are moving in line to how other countries treat foreign profits. Because at the moment, you've got the absurd situation where losses overseas can mean that businesses avoid paying their fair share of corporation tax in the UK. This moves us in line with what other countries world do. It is closing a tax loophole, and the honourable lady and the Conservatives should welcome that.
David Williams.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And what a day to be a Stokey. As the Chancellor knows, my mum proudly works in the pot banks of Tunstall and Burslem, and 10 weeks ago I asked the Prime Minister in this place what support the government could offer our ceramic sector. Well, the good news is my mum's watching again right now at home. And she's clearly happy because I've had a three-word text and it says, "Nice one, Duck." So can I ask the Chancellor how we will make sure the £120 million support package benefits ceramics companies of every size, from our Moorcross to our moorlands, from our steel arts to our Churchills, so that we protect jobs, skills and the future of our economy?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for that question. Can I say to Mrs Williams and all those who work in the ceramics sector, I'm proud to be the Chancellor that is backing British industry and British jobs.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Back in March, the Chancellor announced the £50 million Crisis and Resilience Fund to help families out with the price of heating oil, which is a big issue in rural constituencies such as mine in Huntingdon. Does she have any plans to extend that scheme or to repeat that scheme come the autumn, given that we are likely to have a similar crisis with the Strait of Hormuz still being shut? And to what extent does she anticipate that the Russian oil that will come via a third country under Commodity Code 2710 will form part of that fuel mix?
Yesterday, we introduced the toughest set of sanctions that this country has ever had on Russia. But like the previous government, we are phasing those in so it doesn't have a disproportionate impact on industry here in the UK. That is what the previous government did, and that is what we are doing as well. The honourable gentleman mentions heating oil and support for people. We were pleased to be able to introduce that targeted support based particularly in those areas that are particularly dependent on heating oil. We're doing a piece of work at the moment to see how much money has been used by local authorities. I know that some have been more proactive than others in ensuring that local residents get the support they need. Once we've completed that, we will look at whether and what further support is needed.
Adam Jurgen.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I welcome the statement and the action that those of us in ceramic communities have been calling for, and I thank the Chancellor for announcing it. This is a good day for all of us in North Staffordshire, Madam Deputy Speaker. There is a ceramics business, as it happens, from Newcastle. I'm sitting in the gallery watching this statement, so I welcome them, Madam Deputy Speaker. And can I ask the Chancellor to assure us two things? One, that the eligibility for the support in this scheme will be as wide as possible, and that it will be as easy as possible to apply for.
Well, I'm pleased to know that a business from Newcastle under Lyme from the ceramics sector is here today, and I'd say to them directly, this government has got your back and wants to work with you and the trade unions that represent people in the sector to ensure that the ceramics industry plays an important part in British life, particularly in those pottery communities for many years to come. And of course, we'll be setting out the details of the scheme, but like the MPs for Stoke, Newcastle and also Amber Valley, this government is very keen to crack on with the scheme and make sure that businesses can get the support that they deserve.
Yeah. David Mundell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Could the Chancellor expand on her discussions with the supermarkets and their role in keeping prices down? Because there is always a concern that when the supermarkets make special offers or reduce prices, rather than absorb the cost of doing that themselves, they pass those on directly to farmers and their suppliers, who are not in a position to absorb those costs because of the fixed costs that they are required to make in terms of their production costs.
The honourable gentleman makes a really important point. Today, I've set out a number of measures that will directly help the supermarkets reduce their costs. And it's really important that those cost reductions are passed on directly to consumers. So reducing the cost of running an HGV will have a direct impact on our supermarkets. Reducing tariffs will have a direct impact on the costs of our supermarkets. And also the trade deal that we're looking to do with the EU to reduce the costs of importing food from the EU will have a direct impact on the cost of supermarkets. I say to the supermarkets, those cost reductions must be passed on directly to consumers who are struggling with the cost of living, given the conflict in the Middle East.
Adam Thompson.
Thank you.